The waves crashed gently against the shore, their rhythmic hum filling the air with a sense of peace. Sunlight danced on the water, casting golden hues on the sand as tourists strolled along the beach, laughing, snapping pictures, and making memories. Among them was a little girl no older than 7, her tiny hand wrapped around her father's. Her dark brown curls bounced as she skipped, her giggles blending with the ocean breeze. To anyone watching, they were just another father and daughter enjoying a summer getaway. No one could have guessed that within hours, they would vanish without a trace. For 22 years, Emily Carter lived with an unrelenting ache in her chest. One moment, she was a wife and mother, standing at the hotel window, watching her husband, Daniel, and their daughter, Lily, play in the sand. The next, they were gone, swallowed by the unknown. The search was exhaustive. The police combed through the resort, questioned every witness, and even dragged the ocean. There was no evidence of foul play, no ransom note, nothing. It was as if they had simply walked off the face of the earth. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The case grew cold. But Emily never stopped searching. She hired private investigators, followed every lead, clung to every thread of hope, no matter how frayed. Every unknown number that popped up on her phone sent her heart racing. Every knock at the door held the possibility of an answer. But the years stretched on, and the world moved forward while she remained trapped in that moment, desperate for the truth. Then, one ordinary evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across her quiet living room, a letter arrived. It was a plain white envelope with no return address. Emily's hands trembled as she picked it up. Her name was scrawled across the front in familiar yet unsteady handwriting. A handwriting she had memorized from old birthday cards and school assignments. A handwriting she never thought she'd see again. Her breath hitched. The room seemed to shrink around her as she tore it open. Her eyes darted across the words, and the world blurred at the edges. One sentence sent a shiver down her spine, making her knees buckle. "Mom, I'm alive, but I can't come home yet." Everything she thought she knew shattered in an instant. Lily was alive. But where had she been? Why had she never come back? And most terrifying of all, who had been keeping her away? Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the letter, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. Her mind raced, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through her ribs. Lily was alive. After 22 years of endless searching, of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers, her little girl was out there somewhere. But why now? Why, after all this time, was she reaching out? And what did she mean by "I can't come home yet"? Her fingers traced the ink on the page, as if touching the words would somehow bring her closer to her daughter. The handwriting was undeniably Lily's. It had changed, grown shakier, but there were still hints of the careful, rounded letters she used to form when she was a child. Emily could see it so clearly in her mind. Lily sitting at the kitchen table, her tongue poking out in concentration as she practiced her letters, Daniel playfully correcting her spelling. The memory hit like a punch to the gut. Tears welled up, but she forced herself to focus. There had to be more, a clue, a hidden meaning. She scanned the page again, but the message was short, almost painfully so. No return address, no details, just those haunting words. Emily's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch, gripping the letter like it might vanish if she let go. The room around her felt too quiet, too still, like the entire world had paused in this moment. She had spent more than 2 decades imagining every possible scenario: kidnapping, an accident, even the unthinkable. But never this. Never the possibility that her daughter was out there, alive, yet unable to come home. Her thoughts spiraled. Could this be some kind of cruel joke? A hoax? But who would do something like that? And why? The only way to know for sure was to find out where the letter had come from. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone and dialed the one person who had never given up on the case, Detective Mark Reynolds. He had been fresh out of training when her husband and daughter disappeared, a young officer who had taken a personal interest in the mystery that haunted their small town. Over the years, as the case went cold, he remained her only ally, always willing to re-examine old evidence or chase down new leads, no matter how improbable. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice came through. "Emily? Everything okay?" The call ended, and Emily sat there, staring at the letter, her mind unable to settle. A million questions swirled through her head, each one darker than the last. Was Lily in danger? Had she been held captive all these years? And what about Daniel? Was he out there too? Or had something happened to him? The sound of a car pulling into her driveway snapped her back to the present. She stood, wiping her hands on her jeans, as Mark stepped onto her porch. He was older now, with graying hair and lines etched into his face from years of working cases that never seemed to have happy endings. But his eyes were still sharp, filled with the same determination he'd always had when it came to finding answers. Emily barely waited for Mark to step inside before shoving the letter into his hands. He scanned the words, quickly, his face unreadable, but she could see the gears turning in his mind. He flipped the envelope over carefully, his fingers running along the edges. "No return address," he muttered. "Postmark's faded, but I can make out part of it." He squinted at the stamp. "Looks like it was sent from somewhere in Montana." Emily's stomach twisted. Montana. That was thousands of miles from where Daniel and Lily had disappeared. If Lily was there, how had she ended up so far away? Mark set the envelope down carefully on the coffee table. "I'll get this analyzed, see if we can lift any prints or trace where exactly it was mailed from." He hesitated. "Emily, do you really think it's her?" She didn't even have to think. "I know it's her. The handwriting, the way she wrote Mom, it's her. I can feel it." Mark nodded, but his expression remained guarded. "If she's alive, if she's reaching out now, it means something changed. Either she finally got away from someone, or someone let her reach out." Emily's breath caught. "You think she's in danger?" "I think we don't know enough yet." His voice was firm but cautious. "If she was being held against her." "Will, why not send more details? Why not tell you where she is?" Emily's heart pounded. She had been so overwhelmed by the letter itself that she hadn't stopped to consider what it didn't say. If Lily had truly been free, wouldn't she have called? Or written more? Mark's phone buzzed and he glanced at it. "I'll have my team look into missing persons reports in Montana. See if there's any record of someone matching Lily's description." Emily's mind raced ahead. If Lily was out there, she had to do something. She couldn't just sit and wait for another letter. "I need to go there," she said suddenly. Mark's head snapped up. "Emily, hold on. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." "I don't care." Her voice shook, but her resolve was firm. "I've spent 22 years waiting for an answer. I'm not waiting anymore." Mark sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "If you go, you need to be smart about it. Let me at least try to get some leads first." Emily opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, something else occurred to her, something that sent an icy chill down her spine. "What if someone's watching me?" she whispered. Mark stiffened. "Why would you think that?" Emily looked down at the letter again, her mind spinning. She wrote that she can't come home yet. That means someone is stopping her. What if they know she sent this? What if they're waiting to see what I do next? The weight of her words settled between them like a heavy fog. If someone had kept Lily hidden all these years, what would they do if they thought Emily was getting too close? Mark's eyes darkened. "I'll have a patrol drive by your house. Keep your doors locked. If anything feels off, you call me." Emily nodded, but her thoughts were already elsewhere. She needed to know the truth, and if Lily couldn't come home, then she would go to her no matter what it took. Emily barely slept that night. Every creak of the house made her heart pound, Every shadow outside her window made her breath catch. She kept the letter on her nightstand, reading it over and over, searching for something she might have missed. But there was nothing, just those haunting words. I can't come home yet. By morning, she had made up her mind. She was going to Montana. Mark wasn't happy about it. He had called in favors, trying to track down any sign of Lily, but nothing concrete had surfaced yet. There were no missing persons reports that matched, no news stories about a woman escaping. Captivity. If Lily had been living under the radar, someone had done a very good job keeping her hidden. Just give me a little more time, Emily, Mark pleaded. If we move too fast, we could scare off whoever's involved. But Emily couldn't wait. Not when she was this close. She packed a small bag and booked a flight for the next morning. She told herself she was just going to look, just to find something that could lead her to Lily. But deep down, she knew she wouldn't leave without her daughter. The flight felt endless. Every second was another moment Lily was out there, alone, maybe afraid. When she landed, the cold Montana air stung her skin, but she barely noticed. She had a single lead the town the letter had been postmarked from. It was small, barely a dot on the map, surrounded by miles of open land and towering trees. Emily rented a car and drove straight there. The town was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew each other. A diner, a gas station, a few scattered houses. She stopped at the post office, hoping for a miracle. She showed the letter to the woman at the counter. This was mailed from here. Do you recognize the handwriting? The woman hesitated, adjusting her glasses. I don't know, ma'am. We get a lot of letters through here. Emily's heart sank, but she pushed forward. Please, it's important. My daughter wrote this. Something flickered in the woman's eyes, sympathy, maybe hesitation. I can't say for sure, but... She lowered her voice. There's a girl who comes in sometimes. She always pays cash, always keeps her head down, looks nervous like she's afraid of being seen. Maybe mid to late 20s. Emily's pulse raced. Do you know where she lives? The woman shook her head. No, but she usually comes by in the evenings, just before closing. Emily thanked her and walked out, her hands shaking. This was it. A real lead. She spent the next few hours waiting in her car, watching the post office. As the sun dipped lower, she wondered if she was chasing a ghost. Then, just as the sky turned a deep shade of blue, she saw her. A young woman with dark hair, her hood pulled up, moving quickly toward the post office. Emily's breath caught. The way she moved, the shape of her face, it was her. It was Lily. Emily stepped out of the car, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear her own footsteps. Lily! She called, her voice breaking. The young woman froze, her entire body tensing. Slowly she turned, and for the first time in 22 years, Emily looked into her daughter's eyes. For a brief moment, there was recognition shock. Maybe even longing. But then, just as quickly, fear took over. Lily shook her head, backing away. Mom? Her voice was barely a whisper. Emily took a step forward, tears blurring her vision. It's me, sweetheart. I've been looking for you for so long. But Lily's expression twisted in panic. She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear. You can't be here, she whispered urgently. They'll know. Emily's stomach dropped. Who's after you? Lily shook her head frantically. You have to go, Mom. You have to go now. Before Emily could react, Lily turned and bolted into the night. Emily's heart lurched as Lily disappeared into the darkness. For a moment, she was frozen, her mind unable to process what had just happened. Her daughter live, right in front of her, had run from her like she was the danger. The fear in Lily's eyes was burned into Emily's mind. She had expected shock, maybe even hesitation, but not terror, not this. Without thinking, Emily took off after her. Lily, wait! Her voice cracked against the quiet night, But Lily didn't stop. She moved fast, darting between buildings, slipping into the shadows like she had done this before. Emily ran as fast as she could, but years of grief had weighed her down in ways she never realized. Lily was ahead, disappearing around a corner near the edge of town. By the time Emily reached the spot, her daughter was gone. Nothing but empty streets and the sound of her own ragged breathing. Panic surged through her. She had come all this way, gotten this close. She couldn't lose Lily again. She turned frantically, trying to figure out which way to go, when a voice spoke from the darkness. "You shouldn't be here." Emily spun around. A man stood near the alley, partially hidden, by the dim light of a street lamp. He was older, dressed in worn flannel, his face lined with something between exhaustion and warning. His eyes flicked toward the direction Lily had run. Emily's pulse pounded. "Who are you? Do you know my daughter?" The man hesitated, then let out a slow sigh. "Go home, Ms. Carter. This isn't your fight." Rage bubbled up in Emily's chest. "She is my fight. She's my daughter. Tell me where she is." The man shook his head. "It's not that simple." Emily took a step closer. "Then make it simple." The man exhaled, looking like he was debating something. Then, finally, he said, "She's been in hiding for a long time. If they know you're here, you've just made things worse." Emily's breath caught. They. Lily had said the same thing. "Who?" she demanded. "Who's after her?" The man glanced around, then took a step closer. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "If you really want to help your daughter, you need to leave before they realize you found her." Emily clenched her fists. "I'm not leaving without her." The man studied her, then shook his head again. "Then you'd better be ready for what comes next." Before Emily could press him further, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night just as quickly as Lily had. Emily stood there, breathless, her mind racing. Lily wasn't just missing. She was running from something. And now, whatever she was afraid of, whatever had kept her hidden for 22 years, knew Emily was here. Emily's hands trembled as she stood in the empty street, the stranger's warning echoing in her mind. Lily was in hiding. They were watching. And now, by coming here, Emily had made everything worse. But she wasn't leaving. She pulled out her phone and called Mark. He answered on the first ring. "Emily? Where are you?" "I found her," she whispered. "I saw Lily." There was silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Where is she now?" She ran. She was terrified, Mark, and some man he knew her. He told me to leave, said I was making things worse. Mark swore under his breath. "I've been digging. There's something off about that town, Emily. It's too quiet. No crime reports, no missing persons. It's like things don't get recorded there." A chill crawled up Emily's spine. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet, but I think Lily's disappearance wasn't random. Someone's been keeping her off the grid." Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "I don't care who they are. I'm getting her back." She ended the call and forced herself to think. Lily had run because she was afraid, but she hadn't denied who she was. That meant somewhere, deep down, she still wanted to be found. Emily took a slow breath and made a decision. If Lily wouldn't come to her, she would go to Lily. She spent the next hour searching, retracing Lily's steps. The town was nearly silent, most of the shops closed, the streets empty. Then, finally, she spotted something, a small, run-down motel at the edge of town, its neon sign flickering. It wasn't much, but if Lily was hiding, it was the kind of place she might stay. Emily walked inside, her heart pounding. The man at the front desk barely looked up. "Need a room?" Lily was there, just a few feet away, her face pale in the moonlight. "Mom, you have to stop," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't understand." Emily stepped closer, tears stinging her eyes. Then tell me, sweetheart. Tell me what happened. Lily looked over her shoulder, fear flashing across her face. They'll come for you now, too. Before Emily could ask who, a car screeched around the corner, headlights flooding the alley. Lily gasped. It's them. The doors flung open and two men stepped out. Emily instinctively moved in front of Lily, her heart racing. One of the men, tall and dressed in dark clothing, spoke first. She doesn't belong to you anymore. Emily's blood ran cold. She's my daughter. Lily clutched Emily's hand. Mom, please, just go. Emily turned to her, shaking her head. No, I lost you once. I'm not leaving without you. The taller man sighed, as if bored. Then you're making this harder than it needs to be. He took a step forward. Then suddenly, tires screeched from the other end of the alley. A second. Car pulled up, its high beams cutting through the darkness. Mark. He jumped out, gun drawn. Step away from them! The men hesitated, then exchanged a look. The taller one smirked. This isn't over. Then, without another word, they got back in their car and sped off into the night. Emily turned to Lily, grabbing her shoulders. It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now. Lily shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. No, Mom. You don't get it. They let us go. Emily's stomach dropped. What? Lily's voice wavered. They never let anyone go. Cold realization settled over Emily. This wasn't over, not even close. Emily held on to Lily, her heart pounding. The men were gone, but their words echoed in her mind. They never let anyone go. Mark approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the empty alley before landing on Lily. Are you okay? Lily wiped her tears, her hand still shaking. No, but I will be. Emily brushed the hair from Lily's face, searching her eyes. Sweetheart, tell me everything. Who are they? What have they done to you? Lily took a deep breath, looking between Emily and Mark. It started the night we disappeared. Dad and I weren't in an accident. We were taken. Her voice trembled, but she pushed forward. There was a group of powerful people, the kind who make sure no one asks questions. Dad had gotten involved with something he shouldn't have. He thought he could handle it. But he was wrong. Emily's heart clenched. Daniel, what happened to him? Lily swallowed hard, her gaze dropping. They tried to use me to control him. When he fought back, they made an example of him. Emily covered her mouth, a sob escaping. She had held on to hope for so long, believing that maybe, somehow, Daniel had survived. But now she knew the truth. He had died protecting their daughter. Lily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. They kept me hidden, moving me from place to place. I wasn't allowed to contact anyone. I was nothing but leverage to them. And then, a few months ago, something changed. They started letting me out more, giving me more freedom. I knew it wasn't real. They were watching, waiting to see what I would do. Emily's mind spun. That letter, you sent it knowing they'd see it. Lily nodded. I needed to know if you were still looking for me. But when you showed up, I realized too late I led you straight to them. Mark exhaled sharply. So why did they let you go just now? Lily hesitated, a flicker of fear in her eyes. I don't know, but it wasn't mercy. Emily squeezed her daughter's hand. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone anymore. Mark glanced toward the road. We need to get out of here. I don't trust that they're really done with this. Emily nodded. They hurried to Mark's car, driving through the quiet town, away from the darkness that had kept Lily trapped for so long. But even as the distance grew, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. For the first time in 22 years, she had her daughter back. But the people who had taken Lily hadn't given up control. They had let her go for a reason, one Emily didn't yet understand. They drove through the night, heading back toward safety, toward home. Emily held onto Lily's hand, unwilling to let go, afraid that if she did, she might lose her again. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Lily finally let out a long, shaky breath. "Mom." Emily turned to her, brushing her thumb over Lily's knuckles. "Yes, sweetheart." Lily looked at her with a softness Emily hadn't seen since she was a little girl. "Thank you for finding me." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but this time they weren't just from pain. They were from something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if they were truly safe. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't losing Lily again. Not now. Not ever.